Kai McCausland was just 7 years old. His sister Ella was only 6. Police have charged their mother, Jeanette, with their murder. Joining us now is Dr. Emily Mellen, a psychologist at Tufts Medical Center. And doctor, we appreciate you joining us.
Dr. Mellen, thanks for being here. So let's start with, we don't know exactly what happened in this particular case, but you talk to a lot of parents in crisis. And in general, is there any way to tell for sure whether someone could become a threat to their own children?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a heartbreaking situation, and in unthinkable and heartbreaking situations, we often want to find an answer, and there isn't always a perfect one. So there is no surefire way to know whether a parent is going to be violent towards a child. In fact, the vast majority of parents would never in a million years want to hurt their kids. Sometimes in really serious mental health crises, such as a new onset of psychosis, there can be some violent ideation, although I emphasize that the vast majority of people with psychosis are not violent at all. So if there was a surefire way to know, then we would prevent every situation like this, but its own unique features.
Well said. Let's talk about divorce, doctor. We know that Kai and Ella's parents were going through a divorce. Based on your own experience, what are some common ways that maybe kids are caught in the middle of that?
There can be a number of ways kids get caught in the middle, and that's despite parents' best efforts. Divorce represents a change in a kid's entire life and entire schedule. They could be caught in the middle in terms of communication, in terms of their schedule changing. They may even change their relationship with each parent as they notice and accommodate the differences in their parents no longer talking to one another. That being said, most parents do the absolute best they can with the resources they have to make sure that the divorce is minimally impactful on their kids.
Doctor, let's talk about indicator signs. What are the signs that a friend or a relative, you know, someone who obviously knows the family and knows the family dynamic, what are some signs that should suggest that they should step in and help?
Great question. Things to look out for would be a sudden and dramatic change in mental health or in behavior, particularly with people who have a history of violence. But even if someone doesn't, if you notice that someone is experiencing new onset psychosis, so maybe they are seeing things that are not there, hearing voices that are not there, it's okay to ask a person, though I recommend people do this in a way that's as non-shaming as possible, if they're having voices that are telling them to do something like harming someone else. And of course, if anybody brings up any language where it sounds like they might be thinking about acting violently towards another person, that would be a critical moment to get a professional involved.
Dr. Mellen, difficult subject. It's so devastating, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mellen.
If you or someone you know is experiencing relationship abuse, domestic violence, there are a number of resources. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE, or you can go to thehotline.org to chat online to find local providers in your area.